Didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was supposed to be coffee. Just coffee. But then there was that look. The one that lingers half a second too long. And suddenly breathing feels louder than it should. You can't tell anyone. Came out quiet. Like a warning. Or maybe a test. Tried to stay normal. Sat across the table. Talked about work. Weather. Nothing. But hands kept remembering the way fingers brushed that night in the kitchen. This isn't reckless. That's what keeps repeating in the head. This is just honest. But honest doesn't mean harmless. There's a son. A history. 22 years of someone else's name on that ring finger. And still, when that forehead rested against mine, the whole world went silent. Okay. You can't tell anyone, my friend's mom said quietly. But that wasn't the first thing she ever said to me. It just became the only sentence I could hear after. Most afternoons that summer started the same way. I'd sit in the corner of a narrow coffee shop 2 blocks from campus, laptop open, pretending to revise a resume I never actually sent anywhere. The barista knew my name, or at least the spelling of it. That felt like progress. I went there because it was easier than going home. My apartment had this hollow sound to it, like every movement echoed back at me. The coffee shop had noise. Cups knocking together. A grinder humming too loud. People speaking in half sentences. That's where she would meet her son sometimes. My friend Daniel. We'd grown up together. Same soccer team. Same math tutor. He still called her mom in that stretched out way, like he was 12. The first time I noticed her noticing me, she was standing in line, scanning the menu board like it might have changed since yesterday. Mid-40s, maybe. Hair pulled back. A few loose strands slipping free like they decided not to cooperate. She wore simple things. Linen shirts. Soft colors. Nothing loud. Daniel waved me over. "You're still alive," he said. "Barely," I answered. She smiled at that. Not big. Just a corner of her mouth. Like she was filing something away. "Still no job?" she asked, gentle but direct. "Working on it," I said, folding my napkin in half. Then in half again. I don't know why I did that. My hands just needed something to do. She nodded like she believed me. Or like she remembered being that age and not knowing where to stand in the world. After a few weeks, it became routine. Daniel would show up late. Or not at all. She'd sit across from me instead, stirring her coffee long after the sugar dissolved. "You always order the same thing," she said once. "Cheapest thing on the menu," I told her. She laughed under her breath. "No. You add cinnamon. Every time." I looked at her then. Really looked. She was watching my hands wrapped around the cup, not my face. I felt seen. And it startled me. At night, I'd sometimes type out texts I never sent. Not to her. Just to people. Old classmates. A girl I used to talk to. "Hey, how've you been?" Delete. "We should catch up." Delete. I kept conversations in drafts. It felt safer there. One afternoon, Daniel canceled last minute. Study group, he'd texted. No apology. She was already seated when I walked in. 2 cups in front of her. "I guessed," she said, sliding one toward me. Cinnamon on top. I sat down slower than usual. We talked about nothing. Traffic. A neighbor's dog. Her garden. She mentioned she'd started reading again. "I forgot how quiet books can be," she said. There were pauses that didn't feel awkward. Just suspended. When she laughed, she covered her mouth with her fingers, like it might spill out too far. I caught myself glancing at her hands more than once. The faint lines near her knuckles. A thin silver ring she twisted without realizing. "Daniel says you're thinking of moving," she said. "Yeah, maybe." I wasn't. I just liked the idea of change. She nodded, eyes dropping to the table. "He doesn't tell me much anymore." There was something in that sentence. Something I didn't ask about. When we stood to leave, she lingered. Adjusted her bag on her shoulder. Looked like she wanted to say something, and then decided against it. "See you around," I said. She held my gaze a second longer than necessary. "You will," she replied. That night, just past midnight, my phone lit up on the bedside table. Unknown number. I almost let it ring out. Then a message appeared. "Are you awake?" And before I could answer, another one followed. "You can't tell anyone." I stared at the message longer than I should have. "Are you awake? You can't tell anyone." The typing bubble didn't come back. Just those 2 lines sitting there, glowing in the dark like they meant more than they said. I waited a full minute before replying. "I'm awake. 3 dots. Gone. Back again. Can you come by? Just for a minute. Daniel was out of town. I knew that because he'd posted a picture from some lake house an hour earlier, which meant I wasn't walking into a family dinner. I was walking into something quieter. Her porch light was on when I got there. The neighborhood was still, the kind of still where every footstep sounds rehearsed. She opened the door before I knocked. You came, she said, like she hadn't been sure I would. She was barefoot, hair down this time. No makeup that I could see, just a loose sweater and soft cotton pants. The house smelled faintly like chamomile. Is everything okay? I asked. Yes. No. She stepped aside so I could enter. I didn't want to be alone tonight. That felt bigger than the sentence itself. We sat at the kitchen table. A small lamp was on, not the overhead light. 2 mugs between us. Steam rising and disappearing. I shouldn't have texted like that, she said, fingers wrapped around her cup. It sounded dramatic. It did, I said, then softened it. But not in a bad way. She smiled faintly. Daniel forgets things lately. Birthdays. Dinners. Calls. She shrugged one shoulder. I suppose that's normal. There it was. The small personal truth. Not abandonment. Not tragedy. Just being slowly replaced by the world. I don't think anyone's ready for that, I said. She looked at me then. Direct. Unfiltered. And you? She asked. What aren't you ready for? I almost laughed it off. Almost said something vague. Instead, I stared at the table, at a tiny crack in the wood. Feeling like I'm already behind, I said. Like everyone else got instructions I missed. The room got quieter after that. Not heavy, just honest. She reached for the teapot to refill my cup, and our fingers brushed. It was accidental. It had to be. But neither of us pulled away right away. Her skin was warm. Softer than I expected. I noticed the way her thumb hesitated against my knuckle before retreating. We shouldn't make this strange, she said quietly. Are we? I asked. She didn't answer that. Instead, she stood and walked to the sink, rinsing a spoon that didn't need rinsing. I watched the way her shoulders held tension, not rigid, just aware. You're Daniel's friend, she said finally. You're supposed to be safe. The word safe lingered. I imagined what this looked like from the outside. 27. Unemployed. Sitting in my friend's mother's kitchen after midnight. I imagined Daniel's face if he ever found out. The fracture. I don't want to complicate your life, I said. She turned off the faucet. You don't, she replied. But she didn't sound convinced. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Thank you, she said. For tea. For coming. There was a pause. One of those suspended ones again. Then she did something small. Almost nothing. She reached up and adjusted the collar of my shirt, smoothing it flat. Her fingers lingered there a second too long. You look tired, she said softly. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that night, the coffee shop didn't feel neutral anymore. We still met there. Sometimes with Daniel. Sometimes without him. But something had shifted, like a chair moved half an inch off center. Small. Noticeable. She stopped sitting across from me. Started sitting beside me instead. Close enough that our arms almost touched when we reached for sugar. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her through fabric. Daniel noticed first. Since when are you two a book club? He joked one afternoon, dropping into the chair across from us. He said it lightly. Too lightly. She answered before I could. Since your schedule became classified information. Daniel laughed, scrolling through his phone. I'm busy. I watched her nod like she accepted that. But her fingers tightened around her cup. Just slightly. Later, when he stepped outside to take a call, she leaned toward me. We need to be careful, she said. About what? She didn't look at me when she answered. About how this looks. I almost said, what is this? But I didn't. Because I wasn't sure I wanted it defined. Definitions make things real. Real things break. Instead, I folded my napkin again. Smaller. Smaller. It's just coffee, I said. She gave me a look then. A quiet one. The kind adults give when they know better. It doesn't feel like just coffee, she replied. That night, I didn't text her. I told myself that was restraint. Maturity. Whatever word made it sound noble. She texted first. You were quiet today. I stared at the message. Typed. Erased. Typed again. Didn't want to make things harder. 3 dots. Harder for who? I didn't answer that. A week passed. She stopped coming to the coffee shop altogether. Daniel mentioned it casually. Mom's been weird lately. Keeps saying she's tired. Weird. The word stuck. I found myself walking past her house in the evenings without meaning to. Lights on downstairs. Curtains half drawn. I'd slow down, then hate myself for it. One afternoon it started raining hard, sudden, heavy. I ducked under the awning outside her place, mostly to avoid getting drenched. Mostly. The door opened. You're going to pretend that's a coincidence? She asked. I shrugged, water dripping from my jacket. Weather's unpredictable. She stepped aside to let me in. The house felt different. Quieter than usual. No music. No television murmuring in the background. I've been trying to create space, she said, handing me a towel. It's healthier. For who? I asked before I could stop myself. She exhaled slowly. For you. That irritated me more than it should have. You don't get to decide what's healthy for me, I said. Not angry, just honest. Silence. Rain hitting the windows. Steady. Insistent. She walked closer. Close enough that I could see the faint crease between her brows. You think I don't know how this ends? She asked quietly. I swallowed. How does it end? With someone hurt. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. Her hand lifted like she meant to touch my face. It hovered there instead. Suspended. Her fingers trembled. Barely, but I saw it. This is reckless, she whispered. Then tell me to leave. She didn't. For a second, just one, her forehead rested against mine. Breath mixing. Close enough that I felt the almost of it. Her lips parted like she might say something. Or do something. And then, the car that slammed outside that afternoon wasn't Daniel's. We both knew it. She stepped back first. Not dramatically. Just enough to put air between us. I could see the decision forming behind her eyes. Not to stop feeling, just to stop showing it. I can't keep doing this, she said. We didn't define what this was. For a few days after that, she didn't answer my texts. I told myself that was fair. Responsible. Adult. It didn't make it easier. Daniel invited me over the following weekend. Mom's making dinner. You haven't been around. I almost said no. Instead, I went. The house felt the same. Same framed photos along the hallway. Same faint scent of something baking. But she was different. Controlled. Measured. She wore a simple black sweater. Hair pulled back again. No loose strands tonight. Hi, she said when I stepped inside. Hi. Daniel hovered between us for a second too long, like he'd walked into a room mid-sentence and didn't know it. At dinner, she asked me about work. About interviews. About plans. Careful questions. Public ones. I answered the way I always did, halfway honest. I noticed she didn't look at me the way she used to. Not lingering. Not searching. After we ate, Daniel left to meet someone. Don't wait up, he called. The front door closed. Silence again. But this one was heavier. She began clearing plates. I stood to help. You don't have to, she said. I know. We worked side by side at the sink. Elbows almost touching. Water running. You look happy lately, she said suddenly. I glanced at her. Do I? I heard you were out with someone. Her voice stayed even. Too even. It took me a second to understand. Daniel must have mentioned the girl I grabbed coffee with last week. It wasn't a date. Not really. Just a friend, I said. She nodded, focusing on a plate she'd already rinsed. That's good, she replied. You should be with someone appropriate. Appropriate. The word landed like a quiet accusation. I dried my hands slowly. Is that what this is about? She turned off the faucet. This is about me remembering I'm someone's mother, she said. And you're someone's son. That's not the same thing, I said. Her composure cracked just slightly. Not in tears. In honesty. I was married for 22 years, she said. Do you know what that does to you? You forget what it feels like to be looked at. And then suddenly, she stopped. Suddenly what? I asked. Her eyes met mine then. No pretense left. Suddenly I feel seen, she said. Barely above a whisper. There it was. Not dramatic. Just exposed. I stepped closer without thinking. You think I don't know this is complicated? I said. You think I haven't imagined how wrong it could go? Then why are you still here? She asked. Because leaving felt worse. Because when she adjusted my collar that night, something inside me settled. Because loneliness recognizes itself. Instead of saying any of that, I reached for her hand. Slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers laced with mine like they'd been waiting to. Her breathing shifted. So did mine. "This can't happen," she whispered. But she didn't let go, and I couldn't tell if she was warning me or asking me. The sound of a car door slamming outside after that night in the kitchen, I thought something would shift outward. It didn't. If anything, she became smaller. Not physically, just in the way she moved around me. Quieter. Polite. She stopped texting first. At the coffee shop, her chair returned to the other side of the table. A full arm's length between us now. She asked about my resume again. About apartments. About practical things. Daniel didn't notice. Or maybe he did and decided not to. One afternoon I reached for the sugar and our fingers brushed, the same accidental touch as before. This time she pulled back immediately. "Sorry," she said. "For what?" I wanted to ask. "For having hands." I laughed it off. "It's fine." It wasn't. A week later, she canceled dinner plans Daniel had made for the three of us. "Not feeling well," he told me. I knew that tone. The one people use when they don't want to press further. I walked past her house that evening anyway. The lights were on downstairs. I could see her shadow moving through the living room. I didn't knock. Instead, I checked my phone. Nothing from her. Later that night, a message finally came. "We need to slow down." That was it. No explanation. No warmth softening the edges. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Did I do something? I typed. Deleted it. If this is about Daniel, I understand. Deleted. I miss deleted. The three dots never appeared. The next time I saw her was at the grocery store. Early evening. Fluorescent lights. She stood in the produce aisle, examining avocados like they required deep consideration. I almost turned down another aisle. Instead, I walked toward her. "Hey," I said. She startled slightly, then composed herself. "Hi." Up close, she looked tired. Not in a dramatic way, just pulled inward. "How are you?" I asked. "Busy," she replied. "I've been looking into a teaching position in another district." "Another district? That's new," I said. "Yes." A pause. "It's better for Daniel. A fresh start." The word fresh didn't feel neutral. "You're moving?" I asked. "Maybe." There it was. The thing she hadn't said before. An exit strategy. "Is that because of me?" I asked, more direct than I meant to be. Her jaw tightened slightly. "It's because I need to remember who I am," she said, "before I become someone I can't explain." I wanted to argue, to tell her she wasn't becoming anything wrong, that what was between us wasn't reckless, it was just honest. But I saw something in her then. Not guilt exactly. Fear of dependency. Fear of needing something she couldn't justify. "You deserve someone uncomplicated," she said softly. "Someone who doesn't come with history." "I don't care about history," I replied. "You will," she said. Not unkindly. Just certain. At the register, we stood side by side. Strangers, almost. Our shoulders didn't touch. When she left, she didn't look back. That night, I opened our message thread and typed, "Don't move." I didn't send it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The next afternoon, her usual seat at the coffee shop was empty. And for the first time, I didn't know if she'd ever sit there again. She didn't come back to the coffee shop. 3 days passed. Then 5. Daniel mentioned the move again like it was already decided. "Might be good for her," he said. "New job. New place. She needs that." Needs that. I nodded like I agreed. That night, I stood outside her house longer than I meant to. The porch light was off. Curtains drawn. For a second, I almost left again. Instead, I knocked. There was movement inside. A pause. Then the door opened halfway. She looked surprised. And tired. "Hi," I said. "Hi." Neither of us moved. "I won't stay long," I added. She opened the door wider. "You might as well come in." The house felt different. Boxes stacked near the hallway. A life in small piles. "So it's happening," I said. "Probably," she answered. We stood in the kitchen like we always did. Same counter. Same faint hum of the refrigerator. But the air felt thinner. "I didn't come to argue," I said. "Good," she replied softly. "I don't have the energy for that." Silence settled between us. Not hostile, just honest. "I need to ask you something," I said. She leaned back against the counter, bracing herself without meaning to. Was any of it real? I asked. Her expression shifted, not offended, not shocked. Just hurt that I'd doubt it. Don't, she said quietly. I need to know. She looked down at her hands. No ring now. She'd stopped wearing it weeks ago. I haven't felt that awake in years, she admitted. I haven't felt chosen. Not like that. The words weren't dramatic. They were steady, measured. But, I asked. But I started needing it, she said. Your texts. The way you looked at me. Waiting for the next time you'd show up somewhere. She exhaled. That scared me. I understood that. The way something warm can turn into something consuming without asking permission. I didn't want to become your secret, she continued. Or your rebellion. Or the woman you look back on and think was a mistake. I wouldn't, I said. You don't know that yet. There it was again, her certainty about a future I hadn't lived. I stepped closer. Not to corner her. Just to be heard. I don't need this to be reckless, I said. I just needed it to be honest. Her eyes softened at that. It was honest, she replied. That's why it's dangerous. The room went quiet. I can stay, I said finally. Or I can let you go. But don't decide for both of us. That landed. I saw it. She pushed off the counter and walked toward me slowly. No rush. No performance. I can't promise this won't hurt, she said. I know. I can't promise I won't panic and pull away again. I know. She studied my face like she was memorizing it. Or checking for cracks. You're not behind, she said suddenly. You just started later. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until my throat tightened. Her hand reached up, the same small gesture as before, adjusting my collar. Smoothing something that wasn't wrinkled. This isn't about hiding, she said. It's about choosing carefully. And what are you choosing? I asked. A long pause. Then, quietly, you. Not triumphant. Not reckless. Just clear. Her forehead rested against mine again. This time, no car doors slammed. No interruptions. Okay, she asked softly. I let out a breath I'd been holding for weeks. Okay. She didn't move to another district. The boxes disappeared slowly over the next few weeks. Not all at once. Just one less stack in the hallway. One less sealed memory waiting to be shipped somewhere else. We didn't announce anything. There was no dramatic conversation with Daniel, no formal declaration. Life adjusted in inches. At first, we went back to the coffee shop like nothing had changed. Same corner table. Same grinder humming too loud. I still ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. Black coffee now. You've upgraded, she said one morning, glancing at the cup. I'm evolving, I replied. She smiled at that, small, private. Sometimes Daniel joined us. Sometimes he didn't. When he did, we were careful but not performative. There was no secret language. No coded glances. Just steadiness. The difference was in the quiet after. At 8:47 a.m., most days, she'd text, coffee. Not dramatic. Not urgent. Just an invitation. I started finding work, small design contracts at first. Then steadier ones. I stopped drafting unsent messages to people who weren't listening. I stopped pacing past her house like I was waiting for permission. Instead, I knocked. Or she did. Evenings became simple. Tea in her kitchen. Windows cracked open. The hum of the refrigerator still there, but less lonely somehow. We talked about ordinary things. Groceries. Deadlines. Daniel's latest distraction. The garden she finally replanted instead of neglecting. Once, while washing dishes side by side, she nudged my shoulder lightly. You look less lost, she said. Maybe I just stopped pretending I knew everything. I answered. She laughed under her breath. There were still moments of hesitation. Public spaces where she'd instinctively create space between us. Days when the age difference hovered like an unspoken third presence at the table. But it didn't control the room anymore. We chose slowly. That was the difference. One Sunday afternoon, we sat on the old park bench near her street, the one with peeling green paint and initials carved into the wood. It wasn't romantic. Kids were shouting nearby. Someone's dog wouldn't stop barking. She handed me a thermos lid filled with tea. You know, she said, watching a couple argue quietly across the path. I thought this would feel louder. What would? I asked. This. I looked at her profile. The faint lines near her eyes. The silver ring she no longer wore. It feels normal, I said. She nodded. That's what scares me least. Our hands found each other without urgency. No trembling now. No hovering hesitation. Just fingers lacing like they'd learned the shape of each other. I don't feel paused anymore, I admitted. She glanced at me. No. Just here. A breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere behind us, a clock tower chimed 9 times, even though it was barely evening. Off by an hour, like it always had been. She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. You still add cinnamon sometimes, she said. Only when you're not looking. She smiled. We didn't need to say what this was. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't rescue. It wasn't a secret. It was chosen. Carefully. And maybe that's what made it last. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? What happens if the answer isn't careful this time? Full story in the link. Check the description.